Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at President Joe Biden's only pathway to victory or 270 electoral votes in the upcoming 2024 presidential election against Donald Trump. And now I truly do believe that Joe Biden is so limited in this election, and the fact that he's so limited to his pathway to victory to 270 electoral votes as an incumbent goes to show you how unpopular he not only among Republicans, also independents, and even some Democrats. And he's currently sitting at a 38% approval rating, and he's disapproved of by a staggering 56%, meaning he's underwater by 17.7%, nearly a negative 18 points in the negatives underwater as an incumbent, making him one of the most disapproved of presidents in modern history in this country. And the fact that he's below 40%, if you take a look at recent history, any incumbent candidate for president who is below 40% tends to lose re-election, and Joe Biden is on track to lose it. But now we're going to be taking a look at his only pathway to victory, because I only think there is one, and because he is so limited and his approval rating is absolutely in the gutter. But before we get started with the map, make sure you guys are subscribed as you're approaching 3,000, and click the bell so you don't miss out on any of my content. Also, we have memberships. You can find a link to that in the description section. Now back to the topic of today's video. Let's begin with the map for Joe Biden's only pathway to victory, because I only think there is one because he is so limited. Starting off with the likely stage for Trump, I think both Texas and Florida are pretty much lost causes for Joe Biden or any Democrat in general. Republicans have gained tremendously in terms of voter registration in the state of Florida. They now lead by nearly 900,000 with the advantage of voter registration. 4 years ago, Democrats actually led, and Trump still won this state. So imagine now he's probably going to win it by maybe 9 to 10 points, a comfortable likely margin. And Republicans are gaining tremendously in terms of Hispanic votes, especially Cuban Americans, specifically to be exact. In the state of Florida, they are shifting towards the right, and especially Texas, another border state, and Joe Biden is indeed disapproved of on the issue of immigration more than any other. Taking that into consideration, he's probably going to lose the state of Texas by like 7 to 8 percentage points. Donald Trump's going to win it by a likely margin, and I honestly think Iowa's going to be safe for Trump. He's going to win that by over 10 points. He's going to crack double digits. A recent poll actually has him up by nearly 18 points, and it's a very accurate, highly rated pollster. Not good news for Joe Biden. As well as Ohio, I think that would be more on the likely side for Trump. I think he'd win that by like 9 percentage points in this year's election cycle. And then as for the Biden likely states, I do think Colorado is going to be safe for Joe Biden. I think he should be able to win that by 10%, so around his 2020 margin. This state's actually getting more bluer, believe it or not. It's still considered a swing or battleground state, but still, it's a very blue one. And Biden's probably comfortably going to win it in this year's election. And New Mexico, I still think Biden's likely going to win that by like 7 percentage points in 2024. It's just too much for Trump to overcome the votes in Albuquerque, a very Democratic stronghold county. It's impossible for Trump to win the state and even make it close. I think Biden's going to comfortably win New Mexico and Colorado in 2024 as part of his easiest path to 270 electoral votes or victory. And now, to get these districts out of the way up in Nebraska and Maine, Biden's probably going to win Nebraska second by like 5 to 6 points, a lean to likely margin in his pathway to victory. And I also do think Trump's comfortably going to win Maine's 2nd congressional district, and Biden should be able to win Maine's at-large just how he did in 2020. But instead of safe, I think it's going to be likely this time around because of his unpopularity. And also, independent candidates and third party tend to do well in the state of Maine. They have an independent senator, and also Susan Collins is very moderate. And so with that being said, I do think that with the third party vote share in the state, it could be high. And if it is high, Maine's at-large would be closer than usual or previous elections past. And then I also do think the state of Virginia would go to Biden by somewhere in between 6 to 7 points if he were to win re-election with basically his only pathway to victory, in my opinion. I do think Virginia would probably be part of his pathway, obviously, because that's a must-win for any Democrat in general. It's common sense if you know how elections work. And also, New Hampshire, I think, would be likely for him. He'd probably win it by like 5 to 6 percentage points. This state's actually polling pretty good for him, more than any other swing state, so maybe he does have the upside here, regardless if this state's really anti-incumbent, because it pretty much is, so that alone can sway it in favor of Trump. But I still think Joe Biden has the edge in New Hampshire. And now moving on to the lean states, starting off with Trump. I think Georgia would be lean for him, as well as a state like North Carolina, even if Joe Biden does win re-election with his only pathway to victory. I do think that because Biden won this state back in 2020, Georgia specifically, is because of the high turnout he got among African American voters, in which Trump is expected to gain significantly among that specific minority group. Polls actually show him getting nearly 20%. That may seem low, but it's actually enough to win him the state of Georgia because the margin of error for Biden was just so low by like 10,000 votes, a margin of 0.2%. So if Biden does not hold up to his numbers in Atlanta metropolitan area or the suburbs here, I honestly do think that's an easy flip for Donald Trump. Then as for North Carolina, believe it or not, this state's actually getting more redder. Republicans are gaining in terms of registered voters in this state, and despite, regardless if Mark Robinson does or does not win on the governorship, Trump's going to outperform him at the end of the day. And a recent poll actually shows Mark Robinson winning, so considering that he's a worse of a candidate than Trump, then Trump's probably going to win by even a greater amount of like 3 to 4, honestly, maybe even 5 points. Some polls actually show Trump getting it by like 8%, and maybe even 10, but I don't think that's on the realistic side. I think that's an overestimate of the former president. And then as for the lean states for Joe Biden, part of his easiest only path to 270, which in my opinion is his easiest pathway, is going to be Minnesota, would go to him by a lean margin of like 4 to 5 points if he does wind up winning re-election. I think that's the only lean state for him in this scenario. I think the suburbs here, Minneapolis, are really getting bluer. But one thing to take into consideration is that he does not have that BLM momentum, and that's what really pushed Minneapolis to the left back in 2020. He won it by 7 points. So instead of 7, I think it's going to be a lot closer, but still, he should be able to hang on to this state. I think the woman vote can come in handy for Joe Biden. I think issues like abortion, I know this is not a midterm, this is a general election, so that might not be a factor, but it's still going to be, somewhat a little bit of a factor. We can take that for somewhat into consideration. And now the tilt states before we end off this video, meaning those states will be decided by a point or less. For Donald Trump, I think he's going to win Arizona by a tilt margin in this scenario if Joe Biden wins, as well as Nevada by somewhere in between 0 to 1 percentage points. Extremely narrow. But as for Nevada, this state's getting a whole lot redder. Republicans are gaining in terms of new voters. I think if Trump's able to flip Washoe or Reno County, I think he's on track to win this state. And if Biden does not hold up to his numbers in Democratic strongholds like Clark County, which is really the only thing holding Trump back from actually winning this state, Trump performs very well in the Vegas area among Hispanic voters. That's going to be key to a Trump victory. I think he's going to win the state in 2024. And one fact I want to point out, back in 2020, Biden did not perform better than Hillary Clinton. He literally won the state by the same margin she did. And considering that every other swing or battleground state back in 2020, Georgia, Arizona, even North Carolina, saw a very blue shift, Nevada actually did not really shift towards the left. Biden and Clinton won it by the same margin, and she's far worse of a candidate, so that goes to show you this state is truly a red trendy state. But as for Arizona, it's really the opposite. It's a left trendy state. Democrats have gained tremendously, and in the midterms, they elected a Democratic governor, which they have not done so since like 2009. And they also have a Democratic senator, and so this state's really getting bluer. I think Biden holds on to Maricopa County. I think that's really important. It's deciding who's going to win this state. I think he might be able to win. But I do think Trump's going to make gains in Maricopa because of the border crisis, and Joe Biden is extremely disapproved on immigration, more than anything else other than the economy and obviously inflation, which is impacting a lot of people. And so the tilt states for Biden, this is part of his easiest path. This is what the video comes down to. I think it's going to be the 3 most important Rust Belt states that can ultimately determine the winner of this election. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I think that is literally Joe Biden's only path to victory. And you can make the case, you can argue that Arizona would go to Biden, but Wisconsin would go to Trump. I think that's a reasonable choice, but in my opinion, I think Wisconsin is slightly more bluer than Arizona is because of the border. If we didn't have a border crisis, I think Arizona would go to Biden, but obviously we do, so I think Trump is favored slightly in that state. I think Wisconsin, Biden would probably have the edge over Arizona in his only pathway to victory. So Wisconsin would go to him by like 0.3%. And he only won this state by 20,000 votes 4 years ago, which I think Trump's going to win it. But if Biden only has one pathway, which I think he does, I think it's through these states. And obviously Michigan would go to him by about percentage point, and his home state of Pennsylvania probably under 1%, extremely narrow. I think Biden really needs to hold on to his numbers in Milwaukee. For Wisconsin, I think that's going to be key to his victory. And then as for Michigan, Biden does need a lot of work here, despite he won it by like nearly 3 points, which it was the bluest Rust Belt state out of the 3 back in 2020. but the reason I say he needs a lot of work to get done is because he received less votes in the primaries than Trump, and Trump had an opponent, Nikki Haley, a real challenger, and Biden had no primary contest. And the fact that he received less votes as an incumbent than literally Donald Trump, who is not the incumbent, is pretty sad, on top of the 100,000 people that already voted uncommitted in the Democratic primaries. So that goes to show you that he does not have enthusiasm in this state. So he needs a lot of work to do, but he did get endorsed here by the governor, Gretchen Whitmer, who is very popular, so I think she can carry him to a possible victory, which is why this state is part of his easiest path, as well as Pennsylvania. Obviously, has name recognition. This is his home state, so he can connect to a lot of these voters. I think if he's able to win Erie County in northwestern Pennsylvania, he's going to win the state, and if he's able to hold on to his numbers in Century and some of these Democratic stronghold counties like Philadelphia and the Pittsburgh suburbs, the suburbs are very important, especially the woman vote. I think that alone can carry Biden to a victory. It's going to come down to the union workers, the hard working class, those blue collar workers, and also college educated voters. If Biden is able to hold on to those numbers that he got in 2020, I think he's going to win this state by under a percent. It's going to be extremely close. So Biden's only pathway to victory, or 270 electoral votes, is through these 3 Rust Belt states. So he's going to get exactly 270 on the dot to Donald Trump's 268, part of his only pathway to victory, in my opinion. I think Trump's probably going to win this election. I'm going to be honest. So he only wins by 2 more electoral votes than Trump, and he's going to defeat him once again. So let me know your overall thoughts and opinions on this map, what states you agree with or disagree with in the comment section down below, and why. Do you think Joe Biden only has one pathway like me? Let me know if you agree. And one last final reminder before I end off this video is to subscribe as we're approaching 3,000, and click the bell so you don't miss out on any of my content. Also, we have memberships, you can find a link in the description section. That's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for watching.